Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is about 5:19, I believe. And just want to remind everyone present that the DEI Committee's mission is to help create a more welcoming, connected, and equitable Oshkosh by consciously including the richness and complexities of marginalized voices in its planning and function. And with that, would you mind starting roll call, please?
Lee,
Present.
Sabula,
Present.
Lyra, Scott,
Present.
Roberts,
Present.
Price, Yang,
Present.
Johnson, Huss,
Present. Okay, was that all?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, just again, remind us all to kind of help ground us that we are gathered here on the lands that were originally home to the Menominee and Ho-Chunk nations, and that we honor the Menominee and Ho-Chunk communities and are grateful for their stewardship of the land and waters. We acknowledge these ancestral grounds as sacred and remember the complex history of settler colonialism on these lands and the effects that persist today. We commit to a restorative and healing relationship to the original inhabitants and our community. Thank you. And with that, I would like to ask if there would be anyone willing to approve the minutes, or if not, is there a need to discuss them? Or can we have a move to approve the minutes from our last meeting on September 27th?
I move that we approve the minutes from last month.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, with that, again, I'm excited to be with you all tonight, so thank you for joining us. If there are any comments, I didn't receive notice that we would have any citizen statements.
Ashley, I believe we have to take a roll call vote on the minutes.
Oh, sorry, skip that. Thank you. Back to virtual land, etc. Okay, we'll step back a moment. So, can we take roll and vote to approve the minutes?
Yes. Lee,
Yeah, yes.
Sabula,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Yang,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Huss.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. So again, I didn't receive any notification, but if there is anyone that has comments or statements they'd like to make to the committee, this would be the time. And I don't know if we have anyone that was registered.
We did not have anyone that registered.
Okay. Or anyone that would wish to speak to the agenda or any items on our agenda.
Again, we did not have anyone register.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I don't know, I'm excited. Hopefully Molly, I'm not sure if she's on from what I can see, but we were hoping to perhaps receive a presentation from Molly on the day-by-day warming shelter and some of the work that's going on there.
My understanding Ashley, was that
Mm-hmm.
she was going to come about 5:30. I think that was the email discussion when we set it up because they were finishing. She was
Okay.
finishing up her board meeting, so they thought that
Okay.
what we're doing now would take a little bit longer. So she is scheduled to come.
Okay. Okay.
Ashley,
Excellent. John, yes, please.
if it would help, I could go through my my stuff first, and then when Molly comes on, we could go with her then if you don't mind deviating from the agenda a little bit.
Hey, I'm good with that if others are. But yeah, I think John just is, once Molly comes on, kind of we'll have to perhaps abbreviate things or try to flex just
Sure.
for sake of respect and time. But yeah, if you would do that, I think that's great.
Yeah, I'll try to keep my stuff brief anyway. So, it was Michelle's on vacation, so you guys are stuck with me today. And she asked me if I would just share a little bit about the strategic plan, the DEI committee charter, discussion of DEI plan and ideas, and then just give everybody a quick update on where we're at with the budget. And I have some pretty good news I think you'll like, but I can also let you know about some of the other potential possibilities with the budget. So maybe just starting real quick, just reviewing the city strategic plan. I know that we've talked quite a bit about potentially having a plan that might come forward from this group. And I think that's really a great idea. We've had a city strategic plan for over a decade, and it's really helped us in a variety of different ways. I know people feel passionate about whatever they're involved in, and I experience that every day with everybody in their own individual departments. They feel very strongly about what we should focus our energy on, our time on, our money on. But, having a plan, I think really creates a level playing field for everyone here, and it helps focus our direction. It maximizes our resources. I think it really increases our efficiency because we can say, hey, this is what we all agree we'd like to do, and then we accomplish it. It transcends some of the political passion that elected officials have. It's been my experience over the 20 plus years that I've worked here that, elected officials come on board. They feel very strongly. Oftentimes it's about one issue that they really care about deeply. But then the work of the city, after that issue is over, it's like, now what are we going to do? We still have a city to run. How are we going to take care of that? And so the plan really helps transcend that political passion. And I think there's a lot of parallels between, the committee and the passion that is associated with DEI, and then what we'd like to accomplish, for the betterment of the community. So that's just a little bit of background on the plan itself. I can just, if Heather, if you could just maybe share the screen with our website for everybody so they can take a look at this at their leisure. Not going to go too deeply into it, but the concept behind the plan is we really have 6 core areas, 5 core areas that are visually represented outside the effectiveness of government. And I think, that, the color black is a combination of all colors. So the intentional thought behind this graphic was that if all those areas are focused on, then we can be most effective as an organization. And that's why effectiveness of government is in the center. So if you just scroll down a little bit further, you can just see some of the core areas that we have that we populate with goals, and then also action items to achieve those goals. So I know that the committee has talked about potentially having a plan moving forward related to DEI. And I think that some of the things that you've talked about would parallel what we have. So for example, we've talked about, should we have a web page? Should we have a Facebook page? Should we have a diversity coordinator? Should we have, those are all great ideas, but maybe having the plan and having a section that focuses on communication, And then we could have a variety of different strategies or action items to help accomplish our goal of effectively communicating with the public. And then again, once we have our plan and we can identify everything that we need to accomplish, then we can hopefully better, support the concept that we may need additional resources like budgetary funds, like staff, for example. So those sorts of things, I think, are outgrowths of the strategic plan. And I have to say, staff was a little skeptical about doing the plan initially, our employees. You know, I had numerous discussions with our supervisors about, hey, this is a very important vehicle by which we can accomplish our goals. And they're like, hey, we're too busy. We got too much work to do. We don't want to plan anything. We just want to do our stuff and get it done. But I think over time, what they realized was if we could plan it and the council could approve it and we could receive funding and support for it, then it could be achieved. And then the other part of this is it's kind of a partnership with our elected officials. You know, they are the ones that make difficult decisions about raising people's taxes in order to fund whatever we'd like to do. So I think if they can go to the community and say, hey, this is what we've been able to achieve through this planning process. We need to raise your taxes by X dollars, but this is what you're going to get for your money. I think it makes it a little bit easier for them to communicate what the citizens are getting for their tax dollars. So it's really been successful for us, and I think it could be very successful for this group because I think there's a lot of things that I know you'd like to accomplish. So that's just a little bit about the strategic plan. I don't want to drone on and on about it and bore you too much. We've also completed a citizen survey since 2009, and that information is used also when we're going through the strategic planning process. So that's just a little bit of information about that. Another facet of the plan, we're not as evolved as we would like to be. I talked about how it was successfully received in our organization and our culture. And I think I also know from experience that if we say this is going to be mandated, then there's a segment of our population, our employee population, which is like, hey, you know, I don't know if I want to do that. So I think if we can illustrate the value of it and then allow them to participate in it, then I think they have more acceptance and more buy-in. And I think that that could also parallel some of the work that this committee is going to do with the community to, you know, involve them, gather information from the community, have them participate. And so it's been successful. And I think I'll just stop right there without going too much further. And is Molly on? Doesn't look like maybe yet. So if it's all right with you, Ashley, I could continue.
Oh, please do. Unless there's a thought or a question by anybody in the group about what.
Any questions or anything about the strategic plan?
I mean, you know, honestly, I do, John. What I'm looking at here is that it is a document that's not static, and it looks like it's tracking the tasks. You know,
Yes.
which is interesting that's shared publicly, and I think that transparency I wasn't aware of. So I might not have actually seen this. So that's cool.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, well, is this so? Okay, so this is obviously a city resource. Is this something similar that we could utilize, not necessarily right here, but just this, what I'm looking at, it's a great tool, obviously, to track and report and you know.
It's a great segue, Ashley, that you're asking this question because, you know, I wanted to report too on where we're at with, you know, our measures. I know that's a concern of the committee. And we had a retreat. We had some educational training for our managers, supervisors, and now our frontline employees are getting the same sort of training. And just so we can have a common base, so we can communicate with each other a little bit better about some of the concepts associated with DEI. And so it would be our idea that, right now we're working on trying to integrate some of the ideas that came out of that training retreat into this plan. And so what we'd like to do is the way that we've proceeded with strategic planning is we met originally with the department heads and council. Then we met with supervisors. This is over a series of years. And then actually some of these concepts are actually in the performance evaluations. The tasks are in the performance evaluations of our employees, so they can see why these goals are in place, how they can make a difference, how they're part of the larger picture, because some of these goals are pretty broad and far reaching. So the idea that we were thinking about with our efforts inside the city is to try to integrate some of the ideas that came from staff into this plan, and then draw upon that to establish some potential measures. And to back up a little bit further, that also was part of the evolution for us for our strategic plan. We planned, we involved more and more people, we developed our measures, and now we're at a stage where we're developing benchmarks so we can kind of compare ourselves to other communities, refining our measures a little bit, our KPIs a little bit, so we can see, how do we stack up against other communities? And that's a little more difficult. It's a little more complex because there aren't a lot of, this is just a humble brag, there aren't a lot of communities that are doing this, at least in Wisconsin. And so the benchmarking part is a little bit more challenging, but I think, we're going to make good progress there. So anyway, the idea would be to integrate some of these concepts into our strategic plan so the council can, as I mentioned, fund those initiatives and support our actions and convey that and communicate that to the community. So when we go forward with whatever we want to do and whatever the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee can recommend for us to do, we can incorporate some of that hopefully into the plan. And hopefully, as DEI moves forward and as this moves forward inside our organizations we talked about, we can come together so we're in sync. When we're doing the work that the DEI committee believes is important in the community because they've gathered that information from the community and this is what they think we need to do. So hopefully it'll be a marriage of, staff carrying out the activities that they think are important, but also the DEI committee thinks is important, based on what the community needs. So, that's kind of the future state, hopefully, that we can get to. So I'm rambling again, so I better just stop and see if anybody else has any questions.
I'd like to add something. Thank you, John, for that explanation. And for I had a chance to look at the strategic plan pretty in depth actually this past week. And what I hear from you is that really equity and inclusion should be the lens at which all of these pillars and measures are created, right? And it makes sense that effectiveness of government is kind of like that middle part of the web or of the pillars.
Right.
And I would say like that meta, the meta core should then be equity and inclusion, so that because all of these goals, we have to question whether we're meeting them for all citizens and for especially the most marginalized communities. So I would just encourage that as we move forward, just within our plan and with the city's plan, that lens of equity is always the framework at which we operate.
Absolutely. Without getting too mechanical in terms of the plan and where we're going to place these elements, these action items to achieve the goals. I think a majority of them are going to be placed in that effectiveness of government area, but they'll also be in those other areas. They'll also populate those other areas. But some of the more measurement oriented things I think are going to be in that central area because, as you pointed out, Angie, if we are using that lens in every one of those in every one of these component areas, then we can achieve our goals in terms of being an effective government. That's really the idea.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yes.
I don't know whether this is related or not related, but this concerns strengthening our neighborhoods. And I believe as the city is wide, it's big, and we have different neighborhoods. And I do believe that each neighborhood has their own groupings or associations. But then you have others that are very active for some reason because people are available. They are maybe retired people, so they have enough time to organize and engage with the city. And I also believe there must be money, some funds allocated to these neighborhoods each year. I wonder, two questions I have. Those organized neighborhoods, I'm sure they are able to access those funds and spend it either to make their neighborhood beautiful or whatever is needed in those neighborhoods. I just wonder those neighborhoods that do not have the strength to organize, the minority neighborhoods, because those moms and dads are working 12-hour shifts, so they cannot have time to plan on whatever they need to do in their neighborhood. So I wonder what the city does with those funds, if they're there, or what plans are all in place for such.
Well, you're exactly right. We're up to about 20 neighborhood associations in the community right now, and those are organized, on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, and community development helps facilitate the organization of those neighborhoods. But there aren't funds that are given to specific neighborhoods that they control. They're in a central repository, and then those projects, whatever they are, from a particular neighborhood or area, are evaluated by community development and then determined whether or not they can be funded, based on need, based on a whole variety of things. So it's not like monies are allocated to the most affluent neighborhoods and they spend them, and then the poor neighborhoods, for example, don't get any. It's controlled centrally, and then the need is expressed, and then the projects are approved. And most of those projects, or most of the neighborhoods that are seeking funding, they would be wise to be aware of the strategic plan, because that's kind of an overarching goal-focused document for the entire organization. So if some of their projects are going to achieve this, that, and the other thing in the strategic plan, then the chances for them to receive funding are increased, just like any other department who's seeking funding, or I would say a DEI committee who is seeking funding, for example, for a particular initiative that might be accomplished by the organization.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. We can certainly continue this conversation, but I see that our guest, Molly, has arrived. So thank you very much.
You're welcome
for joining us.
You're welcome. And
thank you, John.
I apologize for getting carried away with this, but I really feel strongly about this, and I think it could really be a helpful vehicle, for DEI, as it has been for the rest of the city. So pardon my enthusiasm.
Please don't apologize. Yeah. No, we appreciate it. And again, hopefully we will continue this a little bit later. this evening to help us move this work along. So, yeah, thank you, though. With that, again, Molly, it's really great to have you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share with us what you will regarding the, current project, kind of state of affairs, what it is you can do to help sort of inform our committee as we look towards, measures of inclusivity and really, what does the city look like as far as caring for each other and on the home front, literally, trying to get a sense of where we can intersect and where things go. So I'll stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm a little late. My board meeting is 4:30 on these Mondays. So I had to exit from my board meeting before I could get here. So I'm Molly Yatso-Butz. I want to thank Carmen for making this introduction for me. She's been a huge cheerleader for the Day by Day Warming Shelter, and we're super appreciative of her. So I will just do a basic introduction of the shelter, and you guys can ask questions as we go. We are I'll just give you our mission statement first. We collaboratively provide temporary shelter, individualized services, and opportunities for self-sufficiency to empower the most vulnerable adults in our community. So we are the last resort emergency shelter in our community, which means that we also turn no one away. So we are the only shelter in the area who turns away no one based on previous history, whether they've been incarcerated or not, whether or not they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol. We turn no one away. So that really does make us quite unique. And I will say that it's probably the best part of Day by Day. I love that we are helping people who really have no one else to support them. I would say it's the most rewarding part of this job for sure. So that definitely does, put us in a different category. Currently, we provide overnight shelter from October 15th to April 15th. And then as of last year, so as of 2020, we never shut down. So we used to shut down from April to October and do a little bit here and there, maybe some appointments or whatever. But we decided that last summer, with everybody else being closed, we could not be closed. So we ran our shelter due to the permit. We can't do overnight shelter services in the summer, but we can definitely provide those daytime services. So we provided daytime services all last summer, and it was so successful that again, come April 15th this past year, 2021, we did not shut down. We moved right into our daytime resource center. We had we had upwards of 30 people in our shelter every day this summer as well, which is interesting, right? Because during the regular season, we can only sleep 25. So I will tell you that we opened last Friday, October 15th. We have been full every single night, and we have had to turn away every single night. We have had to turn away upwards of 10 people a night. This past weekend, we had to turn away a 67 and 77-year-old two women. Absolutely heartbreaking. We have no other resources for them but to give them a sleeping bag and a gift card and send them to the streets. And so, they found places to sleep around the shelter, which is also, so sad, which is why this project is so important to our community, because we have more homeless individuals than we have beds for, and we've known that for a while. Not only does Day by Day provide overnight shelter, but we provide hot meals, showers, programming. So I'll get into that a little bit, but last season, so last October through April, we provided over 4,000 nights of shelter and over 8,200 meals. So we do a lot as far as those basic needs go. But then as of last July, we decided to change our entire pretty much the way we served people in shelter. So we decided that we were going to develop this program model that really engaged our clients, that we could move them along their path to independence a little faster. And so we developed 9 goals, and every one of our clients now works within one of those 9 goals to constantly be moving themselves up towards, again, self-sufficiency and independence. So we developed a goal for basic needs, housing, health and wellness, employment, financial stability, sobriety, social connectedness, transportation, and education. So just in those 6 months that we were open last year for overnight shelter, 58 of our guests set the goal for employment, 34 steps were made, and 14 people achieved full-time employment while working through those goals last year in those 6 months. So we now can see just where everybody is at also through their goals. And then we report that information out to our community and our donors every month, just so that you're aware, in case you ever want to know. So we've just done a lot with our programming. One of the other things, so these are all new things that we've added in the last year and roughly 3 months. We've added weekly one-on-one substance abuse and mental health counseling. We have counselors that come right on site with their therapy dogs and provide weekly counseling to our clients. We now have Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous support groups right on site. The St. Anne's Clinic was built next door just over a year ago, so they can offer immediate and on-site appointments to our guests. We do a prayer group, a grief support group. We now have health and wellness classes, including exercise and nutrition. Most of our guests, when you're homeless, you haven't grocery shopped in a really long time. You haven't prepared your own meal. We have a gentleman moving into his first apartment tomorrow. He's been homeless for 17 years. So I, of course, wanted to take up to St. Vincent de Paul, where he got like a set of 4 dishes and 4 glasses and all that fun stuff, because I took one of our other guests shopping there last week, and it was so fun to be able to do that with her. And he was like, nope, I only need 1 cup and 1 fork and 1 plate. And I mean, right, when you've been homeless for 17 years, one of everything sounds really good. So the exercise and nutrition classes, although they may sound frivolous, have actually been pretty instrumental to our guests. We've also encouraged our guests to volunteer throughout the community. So you'll notice that on one Thursday a month, we go and we clean up the downtown, and they have just absolutely loved that, giving back to a community that has given so much to them. We do employment and job coaching. We do this one-on-one and in small groups. We started offering Rent Smart and financial wellness classes that we can offer people, again, small groups and one-on-one. And then we started offering support dog training here at the shelter this summer. So every Friday we had dogs in training who would come to the shelter and spend time with our guests. And one of the dogs actually received its certificate this summer, and we found one of our clients who's been homeless a long time. He was crying in the chair, and one of our staff asked him why he was crying. And he said because he felt like he had helped that dog earn its certificate, and he had never been a part of anything positive before. So, I think encouraging them to be involved, right? We all want purpose in our life. And I think we've developed this new style of interaction with our staff. We've developed this new programming model to really prove that everyone belongs here, and that everyone has a purpose, and they get to determine that with our staff and things like that, which has been super successful. I will also share with you that since we changed all of our coaching and programming model just in the last year, we've noticed that our interactions with guests down in the shelter have been so much more relaxed as well. So it used to be where the shelter was very much rules and strikes and warnings, and I'll be honest with you, I came in last year, and I'm a mom. I think I've been maybe the only executive director that has children, or the only one that works here that has children, actually. And I was like, why? Why are we constantly punishing them? Their life is a punishment, right? Like, they struggle every single day. So why not reward the good behavior instead of constantly rewarding the bad behavior, or punishing the bad behavior? And I said, they put their punching gloves on because they think we're going to take something away from them that means so much. A bed, a meal, shelter. I said, that's just like when I tell my kids I'm going to take away their cell phone, right? The punching gloves go on, and they start saying stuff that they don't really mean, and they get so scared that you're going to take away this line of communication. So we've changed all of that. And now we really focus on rewarding the good behavior, moving through channels of positive reinforcement and steps towards that better life. And it has really really changed a lot of things. So in our staff, we have 2 programming people who work with our guests now one-on-one, to really encourage this behavior and move them through, to get them to a better place. And they're wonderful. And they just do such a good job, and our guests have formed a good relationship with them. The trust is there, and I think it's really encouraging. So some of our current challenges, we only have a capacity for 25 guests per night, so many are turned away. In fact, like I said, for the last 10 nights since we've been open, we've had to turn away every single night. Our overnight services, due to the permit that we're in, are limited to 6 months per year. So that's really unfortunate. And again, turning it into a daytime resource center for the last 2 summers has been really helpful. However, when we turn it into that daytime resource center, we do lose contact with some of the guests during the summer months. But then we created a street outreach program in which we have staff going out to the streets of Oshkosh and engaging with people throughout the community who are homeless. So that's been really helpful too. So then that brings them back in and, gives some continuity with those goals. We really lack space for any confidential conversations. If you guys ever came in here, we have sometimes 7 people working in one office. It's pretty disastrous. And remember, when people come to us, they're in crisis. So we have no place to even bring them to kind of de-escalate the situation a little bit, make them feel comfortable, do a one-on-one conversation, coaching session, nothing. We just have no place to go with anybody. We are currently in a 2-story building. We have many guests who are disabled. So it makes it really impossible to navigate our stairs. Mattresses are on the floor, again, making it super difficult. We've really just outgrown the space. So our donations have to be kept off-site. So we actually have to, in the winter, coordinate our pickup of our off-site donation space to make sure that we can get the laundry detergent back here in time so that it can defrost before we use it for laundry. So it's just not convenient. Our kitchen usage is limited. Actually, we have no kitchen, so everybody has to bring their meals here, plug them in, and then we try not to blow a fuse and all of that. And then we do about 55 to 65 loads of laundry a day. And we have 2 what I would call semi-working washers and 2 semi-working dryers. We also at this point have limited safety and security, which I always laugh when I say that in the presentation, because I would say we have no safety and security. So it's just, we've just really outgrown the space. And I always remind people that, we have a 6-month temporary use permit because 10 years and 6 months ago, we were only supposed to be here for 6 months. So now we're 10 years and 6 months into a 6-month lease, and that's why all of this has happened. So we definitely are wanting to move forward in this project called Building Hope. The tagline is From Shelter to Stability, which is really what we're really focused on at Day by Day. We would like to increase our overnight capacity to 50 guests per night. We would also increase our services to 365 days per year. Our homeless community members will then have continuity in their services while working towards those personal goals. We will be a 1-story building. It will be accessible to varying abilities. The beds will be raised off the floor with an opportunity for our guests to store their belongings under the bed. We will have an operational kitchen, which includes refrigeration and freezer. We will have ample storage space for donations, private meeting areas, and then of course, community partners to come in and do the programming such as the alcohol and drug counseling, the health and wellness classes, finance classes, all of that. We will be able to provide additional showers, bathroom facilities, and a larger laundry room. At this point, we have one toilet for all of the men who utilize the shelter every night, and we have 2 showers. So we can allow people 15 minutes in a shower, and we pretty much have to move them as quickly as we can through those 2 showers. And they're makeshift showers. They weren't even really meant to be showers. They were just put in here to help us out, temporarily. And also the new building will provide proper security. So those are some of the highlights. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I am really horrible at technology, but I would love to share a video with you that I have about why the new shelter is so valuable to our clients. So can I try it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like to, by all means.
Okay. Yeah, I am so bad at this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go to share. Okay, just had me do. See, I told you I'm horrible at this stuff.
Well,
Now I can't
unfortunately,
even.
Molly, I am of no use.
That's
I don't
okay.
know that I have control.
Now I can't even get it to where I can see where I share my screen. So we may have to just skip it, but I'm hoping you guys can see it someday, and maybe now you guys people can just ask me questions. My apologies.
Mm-hmm.
Molly,
Oh, yeah.
this is Beth Roberts. I have a question. When you were referring to the permit, which I've heard about, like you said, probably 10 years, who actually grants the permit? Like, who granted the limited permit?
So it's the city's
Oh,
use
yeah.
permit.
So I've never understood, and maybe this is a John question, I don't know. I've never
Yeah.
understood if the city's the one saying it can only be in operation for 6 months, and we've struggled with particularly the later spring and earlier fall weather and whatnot, why don't we just change the permit?
So it has to do with the building and its setup. So there aren't appropriate sprinklers. There's like it's not set. There's no air conditioning, for example.
It wasn't
There's a
designed
bunch
for
of
that
other
purpose.
things.
Minimize all the needs that you're talking about, because I get why we need a different shelter, and all of the things that you brought up need to be in place. I just never understood why the city couldn't, leave it open through April or start it earlier in October or something when the weather is really bad.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it has to do with the actual setup of the building and that it's not up. I don't think it's up to code really either, right, John? Something like that.
Right. There's all kinds of code issues, but I guess I understand Beth's question, but I guess I would say that we have allowed the shelter to run for 10 years
Mm-hmm.
on a 6-month temporary use permit.
Renewal.
It's not like we've really been too restrictive. And I think in a roundabout way, I think Molly would like to force this issue so she could get some permanency. So, sometimes we're helpful, even though other people view it as being too restrictive, because, we can bring issues to the forefront. And I think hopefully that's what's happening for Molly right now, because we certainly recognize that this is a community need.
Yeah, and I think people in the city and everything have tried. It's just it doesn't meet codes. So we just, again, it's just really about outgrowing the space. And no, the bill, and we're so appreciative to Most Blessed Sacrament as well. So it's not about not appreciating what has been given to us. It's really just that it no longer fits our needs.
Mm-hmm. You know, Molly, if I may ask this, from your perspective, where are our weak points? I mean, you speak from the you know, this Building Hope project, you know, going from, you know, literally being on the streets to, you know, being sheltered in your own space, you know, and beyond. That's a grand and long range vision and a journey for some folks. I'm just wondering what you are observing are sort of our gaps. Are there some major gaps that city could influence, you know, that we might be able to help, you know?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So we have a guest who works full time at Oshkosh Coil in Spring, and he purposely chose second shift because he makes more money. We have a great system here at the shelter where if you work and show proof of employment, you get a bed save each night. So he's guaranteed that he gets a bed and a hot meal when he gets here each night. But he gets off of work at midnight, and then he has to walk to the shelter. So he arrives at the shelter about 1:30 a.m. So last week I was feeling so horrible that I actually called a cab and just bought him a cab, because I was like, how do we expect people to be successful when there's so many barriers, right? So then I got frustrated and I was like, okay, how many nights can I afford to buy him a cab, and how are we going to sustain this? And it's obviously not sustainable. And, you know, if I do it for one, I have to do it for everybody. So, but I just needed to think about it. So I found out that there was an application through the city of Oshkosh's transportation department that we could apply for a cab card for these individuals for, I believe it was $3 or $4. And I told our individuals that were working that I would pay for it until they got their first paycheck. So again, really wanting them to get into a good habit, right? So our program director put these individuals that are at the shelter and work full time, put them in her car and drove them down to the city's transportation department and said, "Hi, we're here with their applications. They need a card." They make too much money to receive one of these cards. And I was like, what? Because they have no assets. They have no home. How do you make too much money? So I did call the transportation director myself, and it's not his rule. It's a federal law. It's a federal rule. The program is, you know, nationwide. It has nothing to do with, you know, the city of Oshkosh transit department director. He's not making these rules. And he totally understood where I was coming from and actually gave me great resources of hopefully options that will work for our guests. But that's just an example. Like, you try to do the right thing, they try to get ahead. And I always say to the staff, I just don't understand why they have to start 10 steps backwards. Like, if we could just, if they could all start at ground zero and always be moving in a positive, right, in a positive direction. I just always feel like for some reason they're at a -10 and have to get from -10 to 0 before they can even get their head above water. So those are some things that have been frustrating. And again, it's just trying to figure this all out. And, you know, I want our guest to be successful, right? I want him to keep his full-time job. We have police officers right now who have really taken to this gentleman and think he's amazing, and couldn't believe when they met him on the streets this summer that he was employed and without a criminal. He has no record. He's employed and he's sober. And so they're actually helping him find a place to live, which is awesome. So they're just hiccups where, you know, I just would really love for everybody to get to ground zero, right? And that just seems to be always a battle. I hope that makes sense.
Well, it makes total sense to me, and thank you for sharing. Are there others comments or questions from our committee members?
Holly, can you talk to the proposed new location, where you guys are at in approval, next step, where we're going from there?
So we have to turn in our site improvement plan, which is the next step that goes to council, or that has to be turned into the city by November 3rd. And then that will go to council, I believe, the middle of November. And then once that's approved, the next real big step is to acquire the lot from, so the city of Oshkosh will then go into vote, I believe, in December, or the common council, as to whether or not they would like to purchase the lot from the Oshkosh Housing Authority. So then once that's approved, then we will then buy the lot back from the city for $1 or whatever agreement we're making, and then we will acquire that property. And that's all being done through CBDG funds that I actually applied for, a year ago. So so those are the next steps. So site improvement plan, the architects and the engineer should have that to the council by next Friday, and then we'll go into land acquisition.
Can you tell us where it's located for those who don't know the location and why that was chosen?
Sure. So it's on the corner of Broad and Seepy, so it's directly across from the Leach Amphitheater.
That's exciting to hear, and I appreciate that update. Thank you for asking a question, Carmen. Indeed, it's something that, Carmen's been helping to kind of keep us informed of along the way, but personally, I've been waiting to have this conversation, and it is a pleasure to meet you, and I would like us to continue these conversations along the way. Honestly, one of the questions I have last, and I'm not sure we're on time, but it's really around the service provider side, and I get that it sounds like you're building some space in there. Are there, again, gaps or improvements, things that you can speak to that you think would help provide better outcomes? If you can sort of speak to that somewhat briefly, I don't know, but that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, mental health is a big concern right now, I'll be honest. We're dealing with a lot of issues that our staff has never dealt with. I mean, I will be honest with you personally, I haven't dealt with most of this stuff. So we're trying to, learn and get through it each night. The counselors that we have are wonderful, but they're, only able to be here 2 hours every week. So once, and they're supposed to be working with our guests, right? Not training or coaching us. So yeah, that's been really difficult. That's definitely a challenge. The addiction piece is a challenge. Again, I'm definitely not real super informed about certain, drugs or alcohol abuse or anything like that. So we really try to manage that as best as possible as well. And so, I mean, but those are things, let's be honest, that we're seeing all over the place. It's not just, right. I mean, there have been more overdose.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there have been more overdose in Winnebago County, this overdose deaths in Winnebago County this year than ever before. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's nationwide. So we're no different than, what the schools are dealing with, and yeah, what all these other organizations are dealing with. But it's a challenge. It's certainly a challenge. And yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but just to be clear about it, it's not sort of like a trap or something. I was just really sincerely wondering, and not to put you on the spot. I hope I didn't come across that way in the questioning, but I mean, and not to try to paint people in any one way or another, because what you're speaking is true. And I'm just sincerely wondering, how do we, as an advisory body, when we look to making recommendations, what can we do to perhaps better coordinate, with existing things? What can we do? But first, I have to, I think, understand some of the nuances of what you're experiencing and seeing. So I don't know, are there others with questions or thoughts? And Molly, I'm sure you had a long day and I don't want to keep you. We know how to connect, I believe, and I'm sure I can always lean on Carmen to help make the connection if need be. But is there anything else that others would like to share? Or
I'm just wondering where we as a committee, an advisory committee, sit with this. You know, we're all individuals. I'm very passionate because it's right in my neighborhood. So I walk out my door, I look to the left, and that's the proposed site. And these are our neighbors. They're currently sleeping in the park. These are our neighbors, my neighbors. But where do we as this body, are we going to do a resolution? Do we need to physically go to meetings? Can we speak as a committee and not just as individuals? How does that work? Because this really is right in our mission of the most marginalized individuals in our community.
are you, if I may ask as a follow-up to that, Carmen, are you asking sort of more as direct action, given that there's an upcoming council meeting and this is not a done deal, that there are processes and steps? I mean, or are you speaking of a specific need? Because we can always speak up individually, and you know, if there is something to really draft or write as a resolution, I'm sure that
I think it would be
toss it around.
powerful to have a resolution, if that's what we want to do. I mean, any individual can come to the meeting. Anybody can register to speak. I've gone twice. I will go whenever it's needed. There has been pushback in our neighborhood. People who are, well, we need it, but not in my neighborhood. So we're always going to find that, and change is hard. But is it, I mean, I don't know at this point, is it as valuable as it would have been 6 months ago when that process was just started? Do we need a resolution? Do we need to be a body that stands behind it? Or are we at that point where just individuals speaking up, or will it kind of glide through on its own merit?
I think as a discussion point, that's a great question. And would a resolution be useful? And a resolution to, end homelessness. Like these are do we resolve to do X, Y, or Z? Those are interesting ideas. I've never thought of it, Carmen. So I think as a body, that's something we have room to discuss. And if you have thoughts or ideas or examples of this being done, or some good ideas, like some of the other resolutions, and that would start with the discussion. Some can make a motion, we can move ahead with this, but we could certainly, strive towards that as a supportive measure. And I don't know.
I mean, it's certainly not something we do tonight, but one of the frustrations that we have all had in this year plus is, what are we doing? What is our forward moving that shows what we as a committee appointed by the mayor have actually done and will continue to do? And I know we've all had that frustration, and I don't think a resolution would hurt. I don't know at this point, and this is, getting the site approved, getting the building, that's just the beginning. Then that's just the beginning. There's always going to be a need for individuals behind this. So it's something we won't decide tonight, but it's something we could discuss.
And no, I really appreciate you pushing on that front. And, I honestly have shared that frustration at times. I no longer share that because I do believe we're doing a lot to help inform and educate and move things along. But there are processes that you get caught into that are sometimes not as progressive or, quick moving as we'd like. And but we can do more. And I think this is great. And to that point, I think there are things that, if it's up to us, if we want to make a recommendation, we can look, I think, at what the city is up to as far as strategic planning and the long-range vision, but we know the immediacy and the immediate needs. And so to me, it's like, well, I don't know the ordinances around, trespass and loitering, and there's a lot of things that might touch on, these things like our rental, our application process, like, there's lots of little things that can exist to help increase access to, opportunity for being housed and sheltered, regardless. And there's opportunities within neighborhood associations. There are opportunities and models to explore. So it will take work and research on our behalf, if there's experts and others that have ideas and suggestions, if we're aware of these things, we collect this. And so I would just say yes to all of that, Carmen. There's plenty to look at, but it does take effort and work. But like Molly, I would just come back to you and others in the field and anyone as we get to meet individual community organizers and support that you're providing is critical. If there are these ideas or thoughts, or if you come up with something that you see done elsewhere, if you think it makes sense for the city, I encourage everyone I meet that we are potentially a good vehicle to run those ideas through and for. And that is, I believe, what we've been established to do, is through this format and our individual activities and efforts to find out what is happening and what do we need to, make things better. And, yes, there might be a formal structured process and way to try to come to this group and this, make comments to us through the formal city, but we do have our individual pathways. And so I'm open to all inputs, and I think our other, as a committee as a whole, to meet our goals. That is what we're here for. So, Molly, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you
and sharing the
guys.
information you have.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great meeting you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, that was, I think, really helpful. With that in mind, I know, John, you kind of started going and kind of into this next section of the agenda previously, talking about some of the strategic plan, and Carmen, you really are touching on some of our current charter and perhaps discussion ideas to include in our plan. And, just from my own 2 cents, given what, John has highlighted again and what exists within the city structure and long-range vision that they're calling the strategic plan, there's a lot there that, while it all might culminate in a lot of ways in the effectiveness of government, I think there are those other areas that do warrant a much deeper dive. Part of my perspective is just as an individual is I have things I like to look at and read, and I have things I don't. Some of this, infrastructure work, hey, that really intrigues me. Like, what is that? Versus sort of effectiveness of city government in general, it might not intrigue me so much. So I would just, ask that, given what we heard John talk about earlier, given what we know we are being asked to do, I would, just really ask that if there's an area you, as individuals, have an interest in kind of looking at, please, take a look at the plan and look at what is. And if we have ideas about what gaps still might exist or a response to the current plan of action. I not to be too prescriptive or whatever the right term is in directing. I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's where it goes. There's a few areas I'd like to look at. Sometimes it helps to work in tandem. So I do know that we can work outside of this group, and at least in pairs. But John, if you have something to add to any of this, please do.
Sure.
But I just, yeah. Go ahead.
I think I agree with everything that you've been saying, Ashley. And I would say, I think, and I can get into the purpose of this group, but I think the intent really was to be a sensing group for the community. So this, all of you are very, I think, pretty well known in the community. And I think that, your connectivity with the community, hopefully you'll be a conduit by which information can be brought back to the city. And as Angie said, prior to this, that when we receive this information and when the organization is thinking about it as how can I effectuate change by looking through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're going to incorporate some of these ideas in their decision-making process. So I think the fact that you're talking to Molly right now, gathering information, I would say, to answer Carmen's question, ask Molly what she needs. Have her tell you what she really needs. I know that she's in very direct contact with the city manager about what she needs, but also if she has any additional needs that she thinks that the committee can satisfy, I don't think that there's any problem with you, with this group bringing forward any suggestions. But hopefully, if you go forward, if you create a plan, homelessness might be a component of that plan. And you might have specific strategies as to how you think we ought to address homelessness in this community. And then that information will be connected to, staff and the resources to be able to effectuate that change. Hopefully that's how it's going to work. But as we talked about, we're in the beginning stages of kind of formulating that plan. But once I think we can get that in place, once the city has their structure in place, and we can make that connection, then we can start to make some real change. And if you want to navigate through the city, I'll try to do my best to help with that. There is a lot of bureaucracy, and sometimes somebody that's old like me, I mean, I've kind of shuffled around here for quite a while, and if I can help with that, I'm certainly happy to do that.
John, I have a question. In writing the strategic plan, I noticed that I was reviewing the 2019-2020 strategic plan for pretty in depth and noticed that there's a lot of overlap with the current one. I'm wondering, who are the main authors of the strategic plan? And yeah, I know that you mentioned that you use the citizen survey to considering the citizen survey results in developing that plan. But I'm curious, who were the main authors of that, and who was included in writing that?
There's just a variety of resources. The citizen survey is one, based on each individual department and their knowledge of their individual area of responsibility. We gather information from the staff, from supervisors, from department heads. We communicate then we have a planning session with supervisors and department heads. We have a planning session with department heads and council members. Council members seek information from boards and commissions and from the community. And then when we get together, there's some pre-work too. You talk about what we believe the priorities are for the community going forward. We talk about what kind of performance we are experiencing. So we create this little gap analysis, and we try to focus our attention on the areas where there's the largest gap vis-a-vis the most important areas. So we can try to maximize the impact to the community. So we do a little gap analysis, that information shared with the council. They take a look at all that information and decide, hey, we'd like to focus our attention here, here, and here. These are our main goals. So then that's how each plan is a 2-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, there are several departmental business plans. And I don't want to be too forward with what the DEI committee decides to do, but I would suggest that the DEI committee could formulate their plan very much like a departmental business plan works. So it could be more specific, it could be more focused on DEI actions and initiatives, and then that would roll up to the overarching plan. Just like the police department has their own specific business plan, and some of their ideas roll up into the overarching plan, just like Parks has their own individual business plan. I mean, I think that if DEI can come up with their own plan, much like those departments have, the potential for the success and the recognition of some of the initiatives, in addition to, we all know how important it is going to be much greater. Because then we can demonstrate that this is what this group believes we need to do based on not only their own expertise, but because they've been sensing the community. They've been asking the community. They've potentially, maybe when we go forward, you may want to survey the community So then you can build your case based on that data. In addition to your own opinions and your own expertise, I think knowing the process and the bureaucracy that I do and the political process, I think that's it's very powerful to say, hey, not only have I spoken to the community and this is what they want, this is what all of us as experts believe, and then in tandem with staff, this is what we think we'd like to accomplish. So please dedicate these resources to us, rather than just saying, I'd like to do this, and then have it politically forced by one or two or, potentially a majority of council members. It's not a good long-term strategy. I'm just providing my opinion on how to effectuate change in the city for the long term.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Very valuable, and hopefully we aren't perceived as forcing change upon a community in any way, shape, or form thus far, but I could think of an area that might be happening.
Only for good.
Yes, okay. Well, honestly, this particular part of the agenda, the strategic plan review and some ideas for us to start putting into it, to me, sort of fold into the next one to some extent, which was around the budget update and discussion. So I don't want to shortchange anybody if they have things you'd like to talk about further, because there's so much we can continue to talk about, I think, in this area. But some of it also in my mind is relying on the structure and really how we want to present, which we're dabbling in now. But again, are there other discussions or things that we feel we should kind of really hash out around the strategic plan? John, any other suggestions or thoughts on really
I don't think so. And
approaches?
I don't want to go overboard with selling the idea, because it's really up to the committee. It's just a thought
Absolutely.
that I think could be helpful.
Oh, and I think we all appreciate that insight and really how best to blend, what we'd hope to achieve and what exists and sort of how things are done. You can only cut against the grain.
Right.
So much. Go ahead.
One more just little quick insight into the city. Not all departments even have their own plan. So I think if the DEI committee did decide to take this step forward, I think some of the initiatives of even some of the departments have not even been made known by their own business plan. So I think this group, and I'm not aware of any of the other committees that have taken this approach either. I think this group would be, well positioned to hopefully be able to effectuate the change that you think is important.
Well, John, on that point, you just reminded me that is something we are really charged with responding to, is sort of what are those equity measures and some of that information and current state, and at what point do we have something to look at and respond to? I mean, because the fact if you identify not all departments have sort of their own plan, or perhaps, that's news. So I'm just, wondering what and how do we start to work in that space?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned before, the information that we had from our training session, and then actually our survey of the departments, and then the input that they provided at the training, those ideas we're going to suggest that be incorporated into the plan. They're primarily action items. They're not overarching goals, but I think they can be integrated in a variety of different departments, and we're in the process of doing that right now. And then hopefully
will those be highlighted somehow? I guess really it's like, because to me, I don't know it in and out to know like what's new and what's not, and things of that nature. So if any of us wanted to focus,
absolutely, yeah, sure. I mean, when we do that, we can certainly provide a report to the DEI group too.
Okay,
but
that would be very helpful.
It hasn't been completed yet. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I'll just keep asking. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that it'll be completed by this next month. That's the goal. And the other thing I guess I should say is, I think the council was very well-meaning when they focused us on the measures or focused the DEI committee on the measures. But it is a little bit backwards. I mean, ordinarily you come up with a plan, then you develop the measures. Now we're rushing to develop measures before we really even have a plan. So it is a little bit backwards, and there's, I think, a little bit of undue pressure on this committee as a result of that. And I'm not afraid to talk to the council members about that either. But you know, one of the things that Michelle asked me to do is just kind of review the charter. And yeah, the measures are an important part of that, but really it talks about that this group is an advisory body to the city manager and common council, providing comment and support regarding appropriate strategies to develop activities, resources, services, promote a positive community environment of equity, inclusion, celebrate the diverse identities of the city of Oshkosh. That's the responsibility of this group. That's B. Duties: serve as a resource, recommend goals, and advise the city manager and common council. You know, that's D. Facilitate input from all geographic areas of Oshkosh to advance the benefits of community diversity, equity, inclusion. That's also part of D. And to educate the public about diversity, equity, inclusion. That's also part of D. And then we get to the focus of the measures, you know, which is within 1 year of creation, report to the city manager and common council on the goals of the committee, which we're a little bit beyond that. Then we get to and identify 5 to 7 equity performance measures for each city department developed by each department and approved by the committee. And then additional resources necessary to achieve said goals, information relative to community diversity, equity, inclusion to share with the general public and underserved populations. And D, best practices of community diversity, equity, inclusion for health, housing, and economic mobility that the city may consider adopting. The committee shall annually report to the city manager and common council on progress on and future goals tied to department level performance. Progress on all performance metrics shall be reported in an annual city budget as part of the regular budget process. But I guess what I'm saying is, I think this group is much more important than those measures, and it's much broad. It has a much broader charge, and I think this group has higher importance. The measures are important, and I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I think this group has, as Angie mentioned earlier, you know, the ability to place the lens on every department in the city of Oshkosh, and I think should. So don't diminish your charge is what I'm trying to say. And we'll get those measures, but
Well, we appreciate that, John.
sure.
I think for the sake of just kind of moving through this, our agenda a little further, if it's all right with everybody, unless there's further discussion to be had here, it might be nice to just get a bit of a budget update in this, our plan facilitator. So we've received 2 proposals from those individuals that had presented last month. Well, Stephanie and one from KLJ group, and hopefully you have a chance to sort of review them. If not, please take some time to do so. But that really is a big part of what, you know, I believe is going to help us kind of move some of this along. It's just getting someone to help us stay coordinated and organized all the different thoughts and ideas that we have. You know, we have limited time during these meetings to really bring ideas to the table. And I truly believe having somebody kind of work to facilitate collecting that and start to structure this is just, it's necessary, and we need some support. And I'm okay with that personally, saying, hey, we could use some help. So
if I could just add one more quick thing,
please.
Ashley, just a budget update
Absolutely.
for everybody too, because it's related to where you guys are going to talk next. I believe, and there wasn't direct dialogue, but I believe Aaron and the mayor provided a proposal for the council's consideration for an optional $50,000 two-year LTE position or consultant contract. And actually, without having dialogue with them, Michelle and I also provided a budget enhancement for consideration of $30,000 of a shared budget that we could use for your consultant services as a facilitator, like we're going to be talking about, and then also some remnant training that we have for employees that we need to accomplish. So I know that that $30,000 that Michelle and I recommended has already been placed in the base budget, which means that unless a council member takes it out, it will be approved. So you'll have those resources for sure or we will collectively, again, the organization and DEI, just to apply towards if you decide you want to select a facilitator. And then there is the possibility that this could still be considered, by the council members. But I wanted to just give you that update.
And that's very good news and a great update, John. Definitely appreciate hearing that, getting some support. So honestly, I don't know the most appropriate way of going about this, quite frankly. I don't know, number one, if everyone has had a chance to really read through the proposals and think about it and reflect upon who we got to meet and hear from the last month. So really that's where my mind is would the group be comfortable moving forward? And I don't even know, John, really, what is the best approach here on trying to make a decision. In some ways, it's almost like hiring a decision.
Right.
It seems kind of odd.
I mean, if we're going to talk negatively about any of these consultants, it probably isn't best to do it in the open forum. But from HR's perspective, I know in speaking to Michelle, she told me that she'd be comfortable if you selected either one of these facilitators because, their approach to how they would act as trainers for our component, she thought would mesh very well. She thought that their understanding of, how important our culture is and how we'd like to make sure everybody else understands how important these initiatives are, that the approaches of these two people would work really well for our organization. So she's kind of saying, I think it's really up to you, and we would take care of the back end of it and the costs and securing them and all that. It's just a matter of who you prefer.
Well, then for me, I guess, I know the right way, just a question here on process.
I'm comfortable speaking up and kind of stating.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just as far as I'm trying to think if we have, we would have quorum and it looks like we have an alternate, I think. Anne Marie is an alternate. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure, if we move ahead. But go ahead,
Thanks.
Angie.
Well, I was going to say that I'm comfortable sharing my opinions based on. I watched a replay of our committee meeting last month and saw both presentations, even if I wasn't present at the meeting. And I was really impressed with Dr. Alonzo Kelly and his presentation, his approach and his framework, the way he, and his experiences, I think would lend really well to helping us facilitate this plan. He's clearly acknowledgeable and experienced in this field. I think that as far as what he sent as a proposal, it is very detailed and outlined, and it seemed to me that it's very straightforward, but at the same time, I appreciated his openness to listening and conversing and really getting a plan that is not, or that facilitates all of our voices. So I'm making, I guess, my choice clear for who I would choose to hire for this position.
That's awesome. Thank you, Angie. I guess in that spirit of things, I am all for. We need a motion to move ahead on, casting a vote and then decide how we want to proceed with that. I would assume. Does everyone in the group present, would you be comfortable, making a decision tonight and who we would like to work with as a facilitator? Because I am actually operating under the assumption that we do want to do this, since that's kind of been a discussion.
I think given that we've heard the presentations and had opportunities to review what was submitted, my vote is to go ahead and vote.
Okay, so is there a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll
to hire
second the,
Alonso.
A motion to do what? I'm sorry, Michelle.
To hire, I propose a motion to hire Dr. Alonso to be our person to guide us with this process.
Okay, to make a vote, all right. And I'm sorry, Beth, was that you that
I was
seconded?
going to second the motion to hire them.
Are we making a motion to make a
Okay.
decision, or are we making a motion to go ahead with Dr. Kelly? I don't know if we have had sufficient discussion. I just want to leave it open for anyone else, or I guess we should leave it open for anyone else who wants
Well,
to
right now
chime
there's
in.
a motion to go ahead with him, and I seconded it, but now is when the discussion happens.
Okay.
So yes, given that there's an motion on the floor to move ahead in hiring Dr. Kelly, as I understand the motion to be, is there other discussion that others feel needs to be had, or questions, or? Okay, Carmen.
Yes. So for all the reasons that Angie spoke, I also agree. I thought his proposal was more detailed. I like the energy that he brought. My question is there going to be a subcommittee that works with him? Having this number of people could become unwieldy. So how does it work, whoever we contract with?
Go ahead, John.
Just my thought would be, he would act hopefully as a resource. Of course, Ashley will be running the meetings, but he could facilitate the dialogue during the meetings. Because we only have one meeting a month, I don't think it would be overly costly to have him be available at each meeting. And then depending upon how the plan is formulated, we will incur additional costs for him to facilitate that process. But I think it will have to unfold, based on the wishes of the group. But if it's anything like the other processes that I mentioned earlier, Carmen, it would be, you may try to gather information externally. You may take a look at that, gather information internally, and then try to determine, what sort of goals. I think you've already talked about a variety of different goals like communication and outreach and, educating the community and stuff like that. And then, the process will just come together, and if Alonso's the person that you select, he'll help facilitate that process. I mean, it may involve some additional meetings beyond these public meetings, or these meetings that are your ordinary businesses held. But I guess I would just take it
Correct.
one step at a time.
No, that's correct. And there are some details in his proposal. And really, I think the big part of it is initially it was a 3-year period, or 3 months, 3-year, sort of a 3-month, sort of a period of time that we're looking to work on this as a focus thing. And to John's point, it sounds like if there's a need for an extension or something else, that would be up for negotiation after that point. But this initial
I'd say
contract looks like it would be
eventually,
for 3 months.
I'd say eventually too, once the plan is developed, the potential for people to focus on
It's kind of
areas
an
that they have
annual.
an interest in, that could take place too. I know you're a very good communicator, Carmen, and a writer. You know, you may very well like to focus on that outreach communication component of the plan, depending upon what's all part of that component. So I think the interests of people will naturally gravitate toward the components of the plan. But I think the establishment of the plan itself, you probably are going to want to involve as many committee members as you can, so they all have buy-in, they all feel comfortable with it.
Absolutely. So thank you, John and Carmen, for the discussion. Are there others that have anything you'd like to discuss before we move forward with the vote?
I had asked for an amendment to the agenda to kind of bring back the proposal that John had mentioned, a reference proposal that Mayor Palmieri and Councilman Aaron are requesting for a budget enhancement for a DEI coordinator. And so to go back to Carmen's question of, will there be a subcommittee to, you know, in working with him or whatnot, and with John's response, one of my fears with doing these during our monthly meetings is that, that it's going to take, you know, a long time, and there's going to be a loss of momentum, you know, from going 4 weeks between, you know, a meeting. And so I wonder if we're going to circle back to that, to the discussion of an ED or a DEI coordinator, because I believe one of the main components of that proposal is that the DEI coordinator would be kind of that, you know, that coordinator and facilitator between our committee and also working with the facilitator. And I know that, John, you're saying like, okay, one thing at a time. But I'm kind of seeing it also as like working, you know, collaboratively, and how to get this plan going along efficiently and as quickly as possible as well.
Ashley, could I speak on that?
Please do.
I guess
Please do.
I guess the best way I think I could interpret, you know, this separated into is the coordinator that we are voting on now. His task is to help us develop that action plan, and a DEI coordinator would be implementing that plan, is kind of how I see it. Their role would be helping us execute that plan, unless, you know, we were to approve that and they joined on before that plan was created. I think the vision is that this coordinator, we get them now so we can get this plan, because that's our number one task. And if we do decide to accept that budget enhancement and eventually get a coordinator, their main role would probably be to execute that plan. So I think they would be separate items in that sense.
Thank you for clarifying that, Aaron. That was kind of where my mind was at as well.
Thank you.
It's sort of, you know, whatever comes online first, and it seems this might be obviously it's our most immediate opportunity, you know, to some extent. But I think they're both in the works, and I think they will mesh up and blend perfectly, you know, when time occurs, and there'll be a natural handoff. And if it's still, you know, one aspect and one player still in the works and engaged with us, there'd be no reason that, you know, it'd be twice the strength and twice the support. You know, it would be great. So I think it's just going to be a natural handoff, and that, you know, but to your point, Angie, not to lose one, being this DEI coordinator role that was, you know, introduced to this budget enhancement is an important thing to keep an eye on, that process.
Yeah, I mean, I only bring it up because I understand that the current budget enhancement, like the proposal, has to go in at a certain time, and we might not have an opportunity to make that recommendation to council until the next budget year. And so I wonder if it's something that we do want to recommend as a committee. It might be, yeah, we might see it sequentially as, you know, the facilitator might recommend this DEI coordinator as part of, you know, as part of the plan might be to hire this DEI coordinator, but we might not be able to do that until the next budget year. John, can you speak to that and help clarify maybe some of my confusion.
I gotcha.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think the thought process is this consultant would be a stepping stone, get the plan together, establish everything that needs to be accomplished, and then that can be used as justification to say, hey, we need to accomplish this, and this. And this is what the coordinator is going to do. We'll have it all outlined, we'll have it all identified. So when those questions come up from the council to say, you know, why do you need it? And what is this person going to do? You can say, well, here it is. This is what this person's going to do. So that was a thought process behind it. In terms of the budget process itself, I know that the proposal that was developed by Aaron and Mayor Palmieri will already be included for consideration on November 3rd, I believe it is. So it's already in there for consideration. And you don't have to, it's not necessary for the DEI group to, do any additional actions because it will be considered.
John, is that a meeting where people in the public can come and speak in support of budget enhancements?
Absolutely. Yep. And members of the public can come to any part of the budget hearing process, is my understanding, with the exception of when we have those departmental meetings, Aaron.
Yeah.
Because we want to reserve that time for council to be able to ask any questions they wish of the departments and not be interrupted,
Yeah. So I guess I would just say if this is something you support, and our committee isn't quick enough to put something formally together, there is always the option to come and express your personal opinion for support or not support, if you want to do so.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I don't want to lose our motion. This is great and important discussion. So thank you for help me get even further clarification, everybody. But again, I want to just kind of step back, and we do have a motion on the floor and a second to vote to hire and bring on, I believe, Alonzo, if I understand correctly. So I guess can we move forward with roll call?
Yes. Lee,
Yes.
Sabula,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Yang,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Perfect. Everyone voted yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and thank you all for helping bear with this process, since I know it can be a little painstaking and probably even annoying to some of you. Anyhow, the next item, really, I think moving ahead, unless there's anything else we need to do around budget discussion, I think it feels like we've wrapped that up. Really, the next thing on the agenda was canceling our December meeting. Just the timing of it all, knowing that city government and a lot of other entities are just kind of, for better or for worse, tends to be the end of year, just lull. I believe we did this last year. I think it lands on the 23rd or something goofy. Our committee meeting would be. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but it seemed a little inopportune to try to put that in there, not knowing how everyone does or does not, celebrate during the time of year. But if there are any, I guess, strong objections to it or strong feelings to hold it, this is the time to have a discussion.
I just want to throw out that, we were talking about momentum before. My suggestion would be that we cancel it, but that maybe if we have a consultant on board, that there is a meeting prior to that date, but in December, to bring that person up to speed, so that we're not just pausing and missing, full 2 months, that there would be some type of discussion with the consultant. Like I said, maybe it's the week before that or something.
Good point. That's why we're talking. Thank you, John.
I could certainly check to see if Alonzo is available for the next meeting in November, if that would work. or find a date right around there that works for everyone, hopefully.
I personally, I think that would be great. And Beth, again, thank you for that point about maintaining momentum and just staying focused. It is important. So John, if you would take that on, please just kind of search around. That would be great. And I think any of us that would be willing and able to attend would certainly be all, I think, in support of that. But again, this is our time to discuss it. If somebody has something you care to say about the idea, please do. But otherwise, it sounds like we'll explore potentially just finding another alternate date that month, so we do continue some of our momentum and continuity of discussions here. So thank you, John. Thank you for raising the issue, Beth. Kind of moving into our last two sections, we had some outstanding issues on the agenda. I know we're coming at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. If you're willing to bear with us, I think we can move through this and wrap up in a timely way here. Really, Angie, Moshe, myself, and others, Beth, I'm not sure who else was maybe tuning in virtually. There was some discussion around the Chief Oshkosh Monument with the Landmarks Commission. There was a great showing, if you will, of support from communities around the state, individuals from the Menominee Nation, et cetera. We had lots of representation of interested persons to find a way to really update the monument's language. And long and short of it, sounds like, and someone please correct me because I don't have a specific date, but I thought it was sometime this first week of November. There's going to be yet another convening between Landmarks, some of the Menominee Nation representatives to further work through specifics of the Metaplaque language. But I do believe we left it in that there's still positive movement. This seems to be trying to work through the last hurdles, if you will. And then hopefully then it would be presented to council to make a decision, as how to proceed from that point forward. But again, I think the objective was really from city manager to try to get our committees to find some general consensus and move our recommendations ahead in a more unified front. For better or for worse, that's the process we're in. This is where we're at, and that's what I can report on that project. If anybody has anything else that they'd like to add, please do. And if not, then some updates on the Herald. There was some discussion. We have a great opportunity again to really determine what kind of information we would like to publish. We were offered some opportunities by the editor, I believe, and it's really up to us to determine what our communication plan and approach will be. I believe Carmen, you had expressed interest. James, who doesn't happen to be on the call, sounded as if he had some interest. But if there is a subset or some individuals here who would really want to help establish sort of a calendar or a schedule or think through how do we really maximize this opportunity to carry out some of our mission as a committee and just further, highlight the great things that are going on. All around there's such really just great activities and amazing bodies of work that are taking place in little pockets. So I get excited about the opportunity, but I think that's kind of where we're at from I understand. We really need to take it upon ourselves to take advantage of this opportunity. And Carmen or others, if someone wants to help take a lead on this, that would be great.
Well, the editor is Dan. He's very excited. There's not a calendar like every week or every month. There's no schedule, but we're going to turn this over to Angie and let her know, share what's going to happen this week in the Herald, if you would.
Sure. So, I emailed with Dan and Carmen and James and offered a reflection piece, it being Hispanic Heritage Month. I know that it's technically past, but last year I participated in creating an ofrenda, which is an offering or altar for my father who had passed. And it's a celebration that's celebrate, or it's a ritual that's celebrated in Mexico and other Hispanic cultures. And so I just submitted a reflection piece from my practice of that, and just wrote how the intersection of my identity of being a Spanish speaker relates, and just I can send you the text that I sent to the editor if you want to get like a sneak peek, but I think Dan was excited about the piece, and just, you know, in our email discussions with Carmen as well, you know, he seems very open to whatever we can offer, and you know, Carmen and I have discussed how we want to use the space to build, you know, to clean all the things that we've talked about, and build unity and create harmony and educate and all of that. So I think that will be published either this week's paper or next week's. I just submitted it, so it might be next week's. But
it's going to either be this Wednesday or next Wednesday. It is not a column that we are purchasing. If we were to purchase it, we would have more parameters, but he is very excited. James is excited to be part of it. And Beth, at the last meeting, offered to take charge of compiling, if I'm not mistaken, a calendar of different, not just ethnic recognition months, but everything that falls under ours. Because I was already working with this, I threw something up on the DEI committee on the Google Docs, and you just go and do a search. There's a million of everything. So I just put a few links up there. I look at those. I use those every day for my work as idea starters. But because we have, and I'm sure Beth has other things that she'll add, we can look out a year in advance and not be caught saying, oh, wow, we missed something as important as fill in the blank, because we already have a year in advance. So we don't know what it's going to look like, but it's one of those soft ways of getting the word out about what we do. He's willing to title it or do a logo, or we haven't come up with a name yet. But obviously the person who writes that piece or is in charge of that week or month, that name will be on it as a byline. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
Well, thank you for sharing and for getting that kicked off and for bringing us all up to speed as to what's happening there. That's good. I think it's going to be, I'm looking forward to more and to getting sort of our own schedule to make sure that we are as inclusive and thoughtful about what's put out there, and that we have opportunities to really offer up thoughts and ideas if others so choose. But that's excellent. That's excellent. I'm so glad to hear it.
I have a question about it though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, for example, you know, June is Pride Month, Gay Pride Month, and we've got February is African American Heritage. You know, there's a lot of different stuff. March has got several different things going on. My question is, I think it's good to put it all out there, but then how is the decision made what the next month's topic is going to be? If there's 6 different things, is that something you want Carmen and I to just decide? Do you want it to be brought up 2 months before that month so the committee makes that determination? Just wondering how we're going to decide when there's a month, well, every month's got more than one thing going on, how to proceed.
Right, and that's why I brought up the kind of the inclusive part, you know, and how to be fair and the decision-making process. I think that is something we will need to decide, you know, collectively, you know, because it could very easily, I don't have an answer. Could have a scale, could be a ranking. 2 months out might be reasonable. Everybody check, hey, this is what you think, you know, on those months that are kind of crossovers, but you know, those are just guideposts, if you will, like sort of low-hanging fruit, as you mentioned the last time, you know, because there are also so many localized areas and individuals or projects or work that we might wish to elevate, such as what we've heard. You know, there's things that we can support personally. This is just my opinion, as I'm so apt to share. So forgive me, but yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here. but we don't have a clear decision-making process. And hearing that it would be helpful to have one, if I'm understanding what you're kind of putting out there, perhaps.
Mhm.
I think, you know, I don't have an immediate answer, but it seems logical that we would have some sort of a consensus, you know, kind of a process that could be at least quickly, you know, moved through, so it's not a holdup. But unless others have a strong opinion saying like, we don't care, you just go with it. We trust you. You know?
And that's what I'm asking is, do we
I don't
want it
know.
as an ongoing agenda item so that every month we're looking forward to a couple months and making that decision together, or do people just
That makes sense
want
to
an
me
article?
personally.
Me too.
I also think, I mean, we've got to go back to the editor and say, are we looking at once a month? What are we looking at? Because that,
Right.
you know, there may be 6 in the month of March, but we may have 4 weeks. We don't know. I think, you know, they have to fill space. They have to fill space. So I mean, yes, they're being gracious and kind, but if what we present isn't something that the public enjoys, that space will be diminished. If it's something that has good, no, it is, because they have to, you know,
I
they
love
pay
it.
advertising. That's all, you know, the media is just all about, we need to make money. We need to make this viable. We need to present it as a way that we're enhancing what you do. But I do think we need order, which is why I like the fact that we know a year in advance all of these national and international recognition months, but we don't want to forget locally what's happening, because even if it
Right.
doesn't fit into a month, it's still something that we want to recognize what's happening around us.
Okay. Absolutely. So what I'm hearing, Beth, is that yes, maybe this becomes an outstanding ongoing thing. We can just go into future agenda items. Maybe this should be one of them. You know, just have this as a future agenda item that we, you know, if there's a 2-month window we should be looking at, that makes sense to me. You know, looking out.
Great.
Why don't we give it a shot?
Yeah, if it's 2 months, then
Seems
that
reasonable.
once that decision is made, it gives enough time to, you know, put the information together for
Materials.
the article. So excellent.
Okay.
And I do
Well,
think
thank
having
you.
that lead time, you're more likely to have new voices stand up, because it's going to resonate. You know, my life experience is different than yours. So there may be a month that comes up and I say, I got nothing. This isn't anything that matters. I shouldn't say matters. It's nothing that I can speak to effectively. So I think having that lead time might help us to find just the right people to speak on that.
So
Absolutely.
just wanted to add up like what Camille just said, in the spirit of inclusiveness, and that's what we are. I think it would be also good to like certain time to give other voices to write a piece. They say come and know somebody in the community who has something to say, to put out that story. You know, I feel like we shouldn't just restrict it to ourselves, but we should
Right.
look at others, bringing a certain story to the community. You know,
That's excellent. Yeah, no, it's an excellent point, Moshe, and I think that's what this time will allow us to do. And you know, maybe it'll just give us some focus and to do that, to elevate the voices of others and the experiences of others outside of our committee. By all means, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind and look for those opportunities and share them.
Right now, the
Absolutely.
county is doing a presentation monthly. So with it being Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, there was a woman from Milwaukee who spoke. And then we're having it's mostly local people who are speaking. But like Moshe said, I like that if we make a decision that it's going to be disability awareness is whatever month, that this group has an opportunity to say, here's some local people who've been active with disability awareness, or some people with disabilities who might be part of that article. You know, so I love that lead time will allow us to find local people to be part of those articles.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks to all. I think further discussion?
And I just
Unless
want
there's
to add
anything else,
to that
please do.
committee with that county group. It's on the county website, but it's the first Thursday of the month at 3:00 is when those presentations are taking place.
Thank you, Beth. It's good to know. Now, I'd like to see more of that collaborative kind of work, city county stuff. What do you know? Anyhow, yeah. All right. I think really, again, I appreciate everyone's discussion. If there's something you want as a future agenda item, please speak up. But absent anything that we want to add, you can always email ideas. I just want to say, everyone, I really appreciate your time and your focus to this work. And again, thank you for being here. And John and staff, everyone, for your support. And I think with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Do we have to do a formal roll, or can we all just agree?
You can just agree.
Okay. All right. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Be well.
Night.
Mhm.